Growing up, there was a saying, what would Jesus do? They even made bracelets, these WWJD. And then as I grew up, I was like, that statement's really not that profound. And often I associated it with, what would Jesus do? As almost those scare tactics or ways to keep you from doing bad. But on this Resurrection Sunday, it makes me think about, how have I lived because Jesus still lives? Yeah. How have I lived? How am I living because he went to the cross, died for my sins, and rose from the grave? And now he lives on the inside of each one of us. So today's lesson is going to be us just quickly diving in, not talking about the resurrection, but talking about a story of an example of Jesus living, giving us an example of how we're to take steps to ensure that we're being impactful, we're being purposeful, and we're living lives of intention. And so first, I got a quick video for you to watch, and then we're going to ask some questions.
Conversations with the people around me sometimes are like just people that I see that are struggling in areas that I've struggled before, and just me either trying to guide them in the right place, meaning like, yeah, maybe you can come to groups with me and talk to my youth leader, or just trying to help them as much as I can without overstepping my boundaries.
For me, I'd say it's kind of like the same thing, just trying to guide my friends and people I know that may have similar struggles or even different struggles, and kind of like trying to guide them to what Jesus would do in the Word. And you know, I've needed guidance before, and they've dealt with it really well, my parents and my church leaders. And so I just kind of take what they've taught me, how they've led by example, and try to do that.
Everyone's going through the same struggles, and our leaders have all gone through the same struggles. And there's some leaders that are like not that much older than us who went through the same struggles like 5 years ago. And then there's people who are like 80 years old helping us and guiding us. But yeah, it's just really cool to see all these different guys come together. I'm Kaven.
And I'm Braxton, and we're reaching our friends through one conversation at a time.
How was that video? I know as we're talking about living a life in accordance with how Jesus lived, some things came out in those two young men's conversation around just a belief, a faith, not only that he's equipped us with all that we need to be impactful, but a faith and a belief that we have what it takes to make the right decision, to move with intention, to be and do the right things. And so it brings me again to the story that I want to introduce of an early example of how Jesus lived. And so we're going to go to John chapter 4. We're going to start in verse 7. A woman of Samaria came to draw water. Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." And this woman, again, was middle of the day. She kind of looked at him, kind of like, all right, you know, how somebody, if they ask you to get them something to drink, unless they old or can't get drink for themselves, you look probably looking at somebody like, what you asking me for? But she doesn't. But in verse 9, she says, then the woman of Samaria said to him, how is it that you, being a Jew, ask a drink from me, a Samaritan woman? For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans. And in verse 10, Jesus answered and said to her, if you knew the gift of God and who it is who says to you, give me a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water. Well, before we go down that road of discussing the living water that Jesus is talking about in his interaction with the Samaritan woman, this first example of Jesus not caring about who you're from, what family, what race, what gender. He didn't lead with what's your sexual orientation or any of that. He said, give me something to drink. But you got to remember the context of the scripture and the time that in which they live is that he wasn't supposed to talk to this woman. As you said, she strongly said, for Jews have no dealings with Samaritans. And so I would tell you all, there may be circumstances, situations where you've encountered somebody calling you in accordance with how they see you outwardly, but not know the God that's on the inside of you. And so this is the first example of how we are to live and how we are to interact with people, not based on where they're from, but on who they are as a person through Christ. And so, but verse 14, but whoever drinks of the water that I shall give him will never thirst, but the water that I shall give him will become in him a fountain of water springing up into everlasting life. Well, naturally, if somebody told you it could give you something where you never have to worry about thirst again, how are you reacting? I'm like, gimme, right now. And so in verse 15, the woman said to him, sir, give me this water that I may not thirst nor come here to draw. And so she like, look, if you got that, give it to me. I ain't never gonna have to thirst again. I ain't never gonna have to come drink from this well again. Please give me that water. But Jesus teed her up again for something else that she was about to experience. Verse 16, Jesus said to her, go, call your husband and come here. Now I'm gonna pause right there. Some of you may be thinking, oh, it's that sexist, that chauvinist, at the time he don't talk to women, so he gotta ask for her husband. But Jesus knew something. She knew something too, because in verse 17, the woman answered and said, I have no husband. Jesus said to her, you have well said, I have no husband. So he threw out a little thing for her to potentially tell a lie. It wasn't if she had a husband or if she didn't. He was looking for her response to see if her ground was being prepared to receive the words that he was going to give her. Because we go to verse 18. Yeah, Jesus said, or we start in 17, again, the woman answered and said, I have no husband. Jesus said to her, you have well said, I have no husband. Because in verse 18, for you have had 5 husbands, and the one whom you now have is not your husband. In that you spoke truly. He didn't immediately go in to chastising her, condemning her, stone her for she has sinned, and we need to put her on the cross for all men to know that this woman has had all these bad dealings with other people's husbands and this, that, and the other. He didn't take it there. He just wanted to know if the person that he was talking to was ready. Because there are going to be times as we are walking in faith and as we're believing that people that you talk to may not be ready for the conversations about Christ that you are wanting to have with them. You have that good news. You have that living water that you want to share with someone. But if they're not ready to receive, then they're saying to you, I want to stay thirsty. Right? So let's move on with this. So if you go to verse 20, and this is the woman speaking. our fathers worshipped on this mountain, and you Jews say that in Jerusalem is the place where one ought to worship. Verse 21, Jesus said to her, woman, believe me, the hour is coming when you will neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. But the hour is coming, and now is, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For the Father is seeking such to worship him. Verse 24, God is a spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and in truth. Verse 25, we skip over that one, but go straight to verse 26, because in verse 25, she's like, I know all of that. Like, I got it. I'm tracking. And she says, yes, I'm tracking. The Messiah is coming. Christ is coming. At this point, between verses 24 and 25, she's explaining to Jesus that, yes, a Messiah is coming. She already knows he's different. That's why she stayed to have this conversation. But verse 26 is when he reveals himself. And he says, Jesus said to her, I who speak to you am he. And I say this to you all with so much love and so much excitement for when you begin to see yourself the way that God sees you. And when you begin to reveal yourself each and every day to those around you, to your family, to your friends, and not just start off with what would Jesus do, but how are you modeling what Jesus did, from the way you talk, from the way you walk, from the way that you love on your neighbor and the community. And so today, again, on Resurrection Sunday, we have to understand that he lives. He left us a comforter. We should get excited that he lives down inside of us. And each and every one of us have the opportunity to love on our community and our neighbor, just as Christ seen a door in this woman to say, I'm not going to pick and choose who to share my good news with, that I am here, that I am ready for you to surrender to me so that you can carry out what you were destined to be and do for the kingdom of God. And so I'm excited for this lesson today. What are you going to do that somebody says, when Lawrence is not here, I'm going to carry on that work of connecting the dots, of bridging the gaps? What about you? What is that thing that you're going to be known for, that legacy you're going to leave, that people want to continue to press on as a result of how you lived your life well? And we, as a people, are to model the way. Because if we look just like everybody else, being tossed to and fro, who are people going to look to? Who's going to introduce them to Christ? You may be the most Jesus anybody has ever seen. So what are you going to do differently that shows people the light that you are in the world? And so that's the challenge. So each week, we always end this with, if you, your family, your friends need prayer, please email prayer@theoutletcommunity.com. Right? The email is down below. But y'all thought y'all was getting out of it. Nope. I left it till the last slide this week because some of you said y'all needed more time on the discussion questions. So I got the discussion questions on the last slide. So got some music that's going to be playing to keep you pumped, keep you engaged. But I hope you enjoyed today's message. Stay encouraged, and I'll see you next time.
Let's go. I don't know what you're going through, but we stopped by to tell you that what's in front of you is bigger than what's behind you. Your destiny, your promise, your future. You might as well shout before you get it, because God sent me here to tell you that what he has for you is gonna be big.
I believe
That it's my season.
that it's my season.
You ought to declare that over your own life. Say, I believe
I believe
that it's my time.
that it's my time.
It's my time.
It's my time.
And I can feel it.
I can feel it.
Say, breakthroughs in the room.
Breakthroughs in the room.
It's yours if you want it. Anticipating.
Anticipating.
God's getting ready to move.
God's getting ready to move.
Listen, you ought to declare this over your own life. Say it.
For I know
God,
my God
he's working
is
a miracle
miracle
just for me.
just for me.
And it's gonna be.
And it's gonna be big.
Listen, don't let negativity, doubt, or your haters convince you that God is not about to bless you. It's gonna be.
And it's gonna be big.
What's in front of you is bigger than what's behind you. You gotta learn how to praise God before you get it. Say, I believe
I believe
that it's my season.
that it's my season.
It's my season.
It's my season.
And I believe
I believe
that it's my time.
it's my time.
It's my time.
It's my time.
And I can feel
I
it.
can feel it.
Breakthrough, yeah.
Breakthroughs in the room.
I'm anticipating.
Anticipating.
God's getting ready to move.
God's getting ready to move.
Listen, say this with me. For I know
For I know
God, he's working a miracle.
miracle
Just,
just for me.
and it's gonna be big.
It's gonna be big.
Hey, listen, I don't know about you, but I'm excited about my future. Why? It's gonna be big.